and co-chair.
Co-chair, excuse
And
me.
just want to recognize that Mayor Jen couldn't be here today, so Lauren from her team is going to be here and is able to pass along any notes or other information from the meeting.
Cool.
And
Uh,
also, sorry, just want to recognize real quick, we have one of our co-ops, Grace, who is joining us today. Grace is a student at Northeastern. And then I think did Michaela just join? No, so Michaela might also be joining as well. So if you see them, wish them a warm Rapid Transit Committee welcome.
This Northeastern grad is very proud to see other Northeastern students participating in government.
Me too, Grace. Go Huskies.
Yeah, I'm a grad as well, a few years before you, Hannah.
So, morning, everyone. I'm going to talk about the proposed CIP real quick. The hope is to get feedback on what the draft CIP is with respect or through the lens of that sort of mode or that sort of approach. Obviously, this committee is bus and rapid transit. Here is Michaela. Um, so the goal here is I'm just going to briefly run through what the T is proposing to do at a very high level. And then, Matt, I hope we can just talk about that briefly. There is no expectation that the committee will sort of make a decision today, but my hope is that if anyone has any individual comments, you could let Hannah or I know that, and that way we're trying to sort of broaden the CIP oversight a little bit beyond just the capital budget oversight committee. So let me just share kind of the draft of the committee's report. And again, this is not meant to be um, you're not expected to have read this or understand any of it. It's really I'm just sort of gonna go through it briefly, and the hope is to get your feedback. And however Matt wants to do it, you can just ask questions in real time, or you can wait till the end. I'm good. Um, so the CIP, as folks might know, is a $9.7 billion document over 5 years. It's meant to be based on the program for mass transportation. The last program for mass transportation was published in March of 2019, and it is meant to be updated every 5 years, which means it's late. It's late by a year. The PMT is meant to be the vision setting kind of document, the place where folks can go and talk about what they want the transportation system to be here in Eastern Massachusetts, or at least the public side of it. And that doesn't exist and hasn't really existed in a long time. And I would even argue that the 2019 PMT, which was called Focus 40, was very limited in its approach. It was fiscally constrained, and it was done in a quite different way. So we haven't really gone through that vision setting process in quite a long time around here. And I think it's something that we, as the advisory board and this committee in particular, need to sort of start thinking about is how do we do that? Where do folks go to have that vision, that systematic, that holistic, that strategic discussion about what we want our public transportation system to be? Now, with that said, the CIP that's before us is quite strong. It is very much a state of good repair document. There's very few dollars that go towards expansion. This is mostly a fix it and make it operate well type of CIP, which is sort of what we expect from Phil Ag. So let me show you briefly kind of where the money goes. So this is the draft that the capital committee is working on. And you will all see this as it gets finalized. They actually met just before this committee met. So I'm going to try to zoom in here. This is spending by mode. I hope folks can see that. So for the past really decade, commuter rail has always been the largest sort of modal category where funds have been invested. And this is the first time in a long time that I've seen rapid transit sort of have more money flowing towards it in the CIP plan. As I said, usually it's commuter rail. Commuter rail, as everyone here knows, is quite vast, and there's lots and lots of track mileage that need upkeep and maintenance. But rapid transit is also where the ridership is. And I should also note, bus is also where a lot of the ridership is. 40% of T trips are on bus. I'd say another 40% are on rapid transit, 45%, with the rest, 10% is commuter rail, and then the rest, you see those other modes, ferry and paratransit. So the T is starting to invest more in rapid transit. I have a breakdown of where that goes that I'll show you in a minute. But this is, I guess, from this committee's perspective, this is something that is worth noting. A lot of the rapid transit money, as you can imagine, is being spent on vehicles. The new red and orange line car procurement, and I will show you this in a second, is by far the largest project in the rapid transit system. It's a $651 million out of the total of 3.8 billion. So a lot of money being spent in rapid transit, but most of that is one particular project, which is procurement of the red and orange line cars, which is something that you would expect. There's also a lot of money for design, and I'll show you this in a second as well, of the new green line type 10 cars. Let me briefly just go to where sort of the breakout of rapid transit. I'll show you this, and apologies for the scrolling. This is sort of by mode within rapid transit, or at least within the rail side of rapid transit, where the money is going. So again, as you can see, this multi-line, this yellow piece of the donut, is the red and orange line vehicle procurement. So it is within rapid transit kind of the biggest piece. The next biggest piece that you see there, green, most of that is the design of the Type 10 green line cars, which are meant to replace the existing fleet, the Type 8s and the Type 7s that are out there now. And so this is a very vehicle-heavy CIP as well. With that said, there are funds programmed for each of the modes. You can see here the donut. Red line, there's a lot of signal work, and then orange, this is Mattapan, that little color there, and this is the blue line. I don't know where the labels went, but I'll fix that later. So as you can see, they are trying to spread it out within the rapid transit line themselves. And I just want to show you
Brian,
one more.
Matt has a question. Sorry.
I'm sorry. Sorry, Matt.
Just a very cool question, Brian. So for the green line in particular, I know a lot of the corridor, especially for the E branch and B branch, need to be rebuilt in order to accommodate the Type 10s, meet accessibility guidelines. When we're talking about sort of readying for vehicles, is that included in the vehicle purchase, or is that just a separate call out category, or will be a separate call out category?
The separate call out category.
Okay.
And let me show you that. So that's the way that they break this out is they have they have certain categories of spending. So vehicles, guideway, signal power, passenger facilities, structures, etc. So the stuff that you're talking about, Matt, the rebuilding of stations to make them ready to accept Type 10s, would be around, would either be in the guideway, signal and power, or in the structures line items here, depending on what the project is. So there's a lot of stuff going on, as you mentioned, for the green line Type 10 vehicles in terms of moving certain stops to the far side. I know you guys are working on this really closely with the T, and we're trying to do that as well in Brookline. I know Amy's working on that. So there's lots of that stuff going on here. Just wanted to note that, as you can see here in this CIP, and this is in total, most of the money, the overwhelming majority, is going towards vehicle procurements. That is the red and orange line cars. There's also a lot of, there is some bus procurement in here. I haven't talked about bus yet, but I will. There is a lot of money to acquire battery electric buses. There's also a lot of money to build out the Quincy facility to support them. And I know I've talked to this committee in the past about you can't have one without the other. You need a place for the vehicles to go, to be maintained, to be operated from. And so it really, the biggest impediment to getting more electric buses on the road is building out those facilities. With that said, passenger facilities is also a huge area. Those are also stations. There is lots of work being done on passenger facilities. That's also where a lot of that Green Line Type 10 stuff is, Matt. So this is a vehicle heavy CIP. It is, a lot of it is the red and orange line. There's also a lot of commuter rail procurement, which is a little bit beyond the scope of this committee. But I just wanted to sort of show you folks writ large kind of what that looks like before we got into some specifics. So I'm just gonna change the screen here. God, my face is really close to this camera. Sorry about that, folks. Nobody wants to see me that close. Okay, share. Okay, can you guys see a spreadsheet? There it is.
Yeah, we can see it.
Okay, cool. So I'm going to make this bigger. So this is what the actual CIP tables look like. And this is within rapid transit. So for this CIP purposes, the T defines rapid transit as red, orange, green, blue, and Mattapan. I have this currently sorted by most expensive to least expensive. So the most expensive project within the rapid transit category, as I've mentioned, is the procurement of the new red and orange line cars, and that has been the case for many years. And the second largest is the design of the Type 10 vehicles. They are still carrying some GLX money here in this CIP, even though it's been open for revenue operation, for a while. But there's $180 million left that has to sort of get worked through. I've asked them what that is, and I haven't heard back yet, but I hope to hear back soon. And then there's also, you can see here, lots of work on yards like Cabot, the red and orange line signals, which are necessary to make the new cars operate well, etc. This is Green Line protection. It's 114 million. I have a lot of questions about this project, as I'm sure lots of you do. Folks might remember a couple of years ago, they actually transferred $500 million from operating to capital to fund this project. And that money sort of disappeared. And I'd like to know where that was and what happened to it. But again, Matt, this is the B-line accessibility improvements that you were talking about, which also relates to the Type 10s. So there's lots and lots of really just basic bread and butter issues here. Jay, I see your hand, sir.
Yeah, it's a question about program spending versus total authorized budget and how, so, I mean, I'm thinking of how we do the tip, right? Like a budget will be within the program's, window of 26 to 30. So just curious how that budget of, most of these projects have a budget that exceeds that, presumably in some extended time frame, how that got, what the process for that is.
Yeah, so for instance, the red and orange line vehicle procurement is like a decade-long project, so that will span multiple annual CIPs. So the 651 that you see here is what will be spent within the 5 years of this CIP. But if you put all the CIPs together over the course of those 10 years, it'll add up to 1.2 million.
Right, no, that makes sense, but so is basically the MBTA board saying we're approving a project at this amount, but that amount is not yet appropriated or allocated anywhere. They're just sort of saying the estimate costs about this much, and we'll plan to spend it over several CIPs. So that kind of how it works.
I see what you're saying.
Yeah.
So when the initial project was approved by the then board of directors or whatever it was at the time, the GM was authorized to expend a total not to exceed, with the caveat that individual contracts and individual sections that add up to that total would be sort of also approved by the board over time. So it's really an iterative process.
Okay, I think that makes sense.
And
Thanks.
the 651 is really all that they can afford in the life of this CIP.
Well, yeah, so I guess the way I'm thinking about this is like a lot of these projects, they're big projects, they're, important, but they're huge projects. And so we don't have a guarantee. There's no guarantee here that these projects will be completed to their full budget, right? Like they could get partway through procurement of the Green Line cars and realize, you know what, we're out of money and we're gonna pause the procurement there.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's why it's important that we sort of continue to fight the funding question, right? So that they have the money they need to get through these long procurements. Now, there's also lots of stuff that we could talk about as to why things take so long. Why buying rail vehicles takes a decade, which isn't the case around the world. But that's also a big question that we have to wrestle with at some point, we as a Commonwealth, but I don't have the answer to that right now. Amy, did you have a question?
Yeah, just that project with the Green Line train protection, is that the system that they were saying if that had been in place, that recent train-to-train collision wouldn't have happened?
So I believe that's true. I don't have the specifics to know exactly if the proposed Green Line train protection program would have prevented that accident. It probably would, based on what I understand. But
The
yes,
articles
that
I
is
read.
the vision for this, is that Green Line trains will not be allowed to get too close to each other. I think it will put in place a block signal system, but again, I don't have all the details, which is what's currently on the red and orange line. I don't know if this will, if what's planned for this particular system would simply alert the driver that they're getting too close, or would actually stop the train.
Right.
There are some systems that actually stop the train, and I don't know what's in mind for this.
Okay. And so, like, you were saying the money that had been taken out of operations to capital to fund this disappeared. So, like, does that mean this should have already been in place, or?
Well, so the team's been talking about a Green Line train protection program for about a decade, probably more, probably 12 years. 4 or 5 years ago, the board of directors under a previous general manager voted to take $500 million from operating and put it into capital specifically to advance this program. That was with a different vendor. That vendor that whole contract was terminated. I don't know what happened to the money, and I'm trying to find out.
Interesting. Okay. Thanks.
$500 million is a lot of money. Wish
It
I had
sure
some.
is.
Alan, I see your hand, sir.
Just pointing out on the B branch short-term improvements,
Yep.
why is Milton included as a municipality?
Because there is also some work within this contract on the Mattapan High School.
Is there? Because yeah, a lot of that space is not shown. Okay.
Yep.
And just for your information, the Green Line protection discussions go back over 20 years.
Thank you, Alan, our resident historian.
Yeah, and basically there was no products available back then that could do the work.
Steve Olenoff.
Yeah, something that could be added to this chart that would answer some of these questions is the percent completed. So for example, that 651 added to previous ones may add up to 1.2 million. But unless we know percent completed, we don't know that, or whether, or how much is left to go on this spend.
Yep, you're right. Some of these say completed somewhere. I remember seeing it in the tables. Yeah, this see closeout. But yeah, you're right. And let me see if I can go back through some old reports and figure out what that is. But the bottom line for you folks is that this CIP for at least the subway and the heavy and light rail systems relates to lots and lots of spending on state of good repair, lots of vehicle procurements, with then some yard and station improvements designed to support those new vehicles. That's, I guess, the sort of headline that I would take away. Let me talk about bus as well, since we're here. And again, this is, we've pulled apart the entire CIP to just pull out the bus specific projects. And the T does sort of do that for us. This is bus, and I also want to say Silver Line. No, it's not the Silver Line. There's 4 Silver Line projects that I can talk about separately. Anyway, the biggest project here, as I mentioned earlier, is the Quincy facility that is necessary to support the procurement of battery electric buses or BEBs. I think everyone is aware that this project is delayed. It's been under construction in Quincy for quite a while. If you go by now, as I've done, you can see it being built, which is exciting. And that is a necessary step to allow the authority to close the really antiquated North Quincy facility, which is an old horse barn, I want to say, which is totally not fit for purpose. And this new Quincy facility would replace that. And it's really important that that get done so that we can begin to take possession of the battery electric buses. And then the second largest project here related to that is the procurement of 80 buses, 80 battery electric buses that would begin to operate out of the Quincy facility. The Quincy facility, I believe, is expected to host around 180, 175 buses. So obviously, it will be ramped up as more BEBs come online. With that said, the plan is for the authority to retire either diesel buses or hybrids as the BEBs come online. There's also lots of questions that have to be answered around how the battery electric buses will work, what the charging situation will be, what the fleet size will be, whether or not the technology will allow the buses to operate for the same distance on a charge as they can now on a tank of fuel. There's a lot of these questions that will have to sort of get answered through implementation, but the plan is to acquire 460 battery electric buses. That will be about half of the fleet. And I guess the plan then is over time, they will purchase more. It's also worth noting that under federal regulations, if you use federal money, which all of this uses federal money, you have to keep the vehicle for at least 7 years and operate it in revenue service. So as the T buys new buses now, just know that they'll be on the road for the next 7 years through, what's that, 2032, 2033. So you can see most of these other projects below it are all vehicles. So they're doing overhauls of existing bus fleets, and they're buying additional battery electric hybrid buses. And that's really the reason they have to continue to buy these hybrid, enhanced electric hybrid buses, which do use diesel fuel, is because the facilities aren't ready yet to take possession of the battery electric buses, so they have to have a stopgap in place during the transition. So I don't think anybody wants this to be the case, but this is the case. And let me just talk real quick about the Silver Line. Well, that's too complicated. I have it. It's in the report. I'll just tell you using words. There are 4 projects related to the Silver Line in the CIP for about 25 million. The biggest is they continue to work on the build out of the courthouse station head house, which has been going on for a while. And there's also money to do flood mitigation in the tunnel. So we can't forget our favorite line, the Silver Line. So that is what my presentation is today on the CIP with respect to what rapid transit is. And again, happy to take your comments, happy to take your questions, happy to receive them via email. I'm wide open to how you want to tell me. And if you don't want to tell me, that's fine too. But, again, we are trying to ask each of the committees to have the chance to receive the presentation in advance and then weigh in if they so choose. So, Matt, that's what I had. Oh, sorry. Let me take Todd's question if you don't mind, Matt. Todd.
Hey, sorry, just quickly, for the bus network redesign, was that number inclusive of phase 1? Because it looks like the 5-year was pretty much equivalent to the total, but I thought phase 1 was already implemented or majority implemented. So just curious if there's enough money to do the remaining stages.
I don't know, but I'll ask.
Okay.
Great.
Okay.
So Brian, I apologize. I had somebody drop my desk, so I got distracted for a second. In terms of next steps for this, would you say that we would distribute it to the group for comment, or are you going to distribute sort of the broader committee for comment? What are your thoughts?
So I'll share the draft of what the Capital Oversight Committee is working on. Once that's a little more polished, which has specific call outs for this in it. You'll all receive that eventually anyway, because the full board is going to be asked to take action on it. In the meantime, I can share the link to the full CIP and to the draft when it's ready, and you folks can just look through that at your leisure and again, share your comments or let me know if there's specific questions that relate to your municipality. The Capital Committee just met an hour ago. Frank Tramatosi's on that as well, and Hannah was there. And one of the discussions we had was around, the vision thing. And I think I mentioned this earlier, the CIP is meant to be based on the PMT, which we all know, and there isn't a PMT. So outside of just having a list of projects that are going to get done, how do we know that this is moving us towards a strategic goal or a vision or a plan or a strategy? And the answer is we don't. And that's okay. That's okay. We can have a bare bones CIP that just focuses on fixing what we have, and God knows we need that. But there does need to be a place for that broader discussion. And I appreciate what the authority is doing with the new red and orange line cars and the Type 10 vehicles. I know there is a transformation plan for the blue line. There is this bus transformation going on. There's a regional rail transformation theoretically happening. Well, what I don't see is how that all relates to each other and how that all relates to a better system for all of Boston and greater Boston. And we need to have that discussion and find a way to have that discussion. And the PMT is meant to be the place where that happens. But we haven't had the chance. We haven't been given the chance to do that. So, I think if there is any real sort of critique that I think I would make of the CIP overall is that it does lack that vision thing.
Sure. So like a overarching narrative and goals, objectives, sort of piece. Yeah. I can totally see that. And we should also add to the city of Boston is going to be commenting. Our chief of streets will be sending a letter. So I think to the point of having as many voices who can raise that as possible from the other municipalities would be certainly important. Jay, I saw you went off mute. Go ahead.
Yeah, thanks, Matt. Echoing Brian's comments there, I think coming from communities that don't have, rapid transit service today, what I always note with these last couple of CIPs is, they're still a good repair and they're sort of like taking things to the next level with your existing services. So, I do sense a narrative of like, how do we make the red line even better? How do we make the green line even better? And that's great. But it often feels like that's happening at the expense of not serving communities that don't already have service. And I've made this comment like 2 years in a row to at the MPO, which is like, it's investment in people who already have, in communities that already have service, and a disinvestment into communities that don't. And so I think one thing to be careful, we take the T at their word that, Type 10 green line cars or, whatever the improvement is a must have, and that a state of good repair. I think there's a fine line between what's state of good repair and what's sort of improvements for, and they're not bad improvements, but they're a choice at that point between making an existing service better at the expense of not serving somewhere else. And I think there's somewhere we just have that discussion, because I think from my end, something like the Silver Line or other investments in Everett, keep not showing up on a CIP, but we see a lot of projects to make these existing services better and better and better. So where does that balance take place?
Absolutely. And if I might just follow up on that quickly, Matt, to your point, Jay, there's also, we need to have that discussion about communities that don't have rail service and certainly need it. I had a long discussion yesterday with a reporter about comments made by folks in Western Massachusetts about how they're getting the short end of the straw on this stuff. And I just explained to them how that's just factual. Eastern Massachusetts is in many ways supporting Western Massachusetts, and the money flows east to west, not west to east. And the money from Massachusetts actually flows nationwide. We're a net contributor state, but that's another question. But just on even without rail on bus, we need to get to the point with the T where we can begin to have discussions about the size of the bus fleet. It's not written in stone that the bus fleet can only ever be 1,000 buses or 1,100 buses. There is a role for bus. There's a huge role for bus. There's a huge role for expanding the bus fleet and taking in existing private shuttles and beginning to rationalize them. And I often joke that if only there was a centralized public transportation authority that was meant to have a networked and coordinated transportation network around the area, we wouldn't have so much traffic. But hey, we can dream. So I think you'll see a lot of our comments from the committee echoing what you said, Jay.
Thanks, Brian. Appreciate it.
So Matt, the T is telling me now that they're not going to be able to make it today to talk about headways. How ironic.
Yeah, that's unfortunate.
Yeah.
But maybe it'll just add fuel to the fire in terms of holding them accountable for not operating, but at least the capital side of things for folks.
Indeed. So if you folks want to either via email or however you want to do it, let me know. Matt, if Yasha Franklin Hodge is sending something, if you could copy us on it.
Oh, definitely.
Something that I'd be, if there's enough time, maybe we could try to rally some other communities to sign on to it. We could do something similar. So I think you're absolutely right. And we have to sort of start getting organized and pushing with a singular voice.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. Brian, I guess to that point, do you think that there are any specific elements here that maybe multiple, like a coalition of communities might want to sign on to? So I'm just throwing this out as one example. I don't know if this is true, but let's say Newton, Brookline, Boston, Somerville all had opinions about Green Line related elements in the CIP, right? Is there some way that we would want to sign a joint letter on that?
I think that's a great idea. And I think there's certainly areas around even the ongoing management or, dare I say, headway adherence of the current Green Line that needs a lot of work. And while the capital projects are really, really important to get better technology and better stuff out there, it doesn't seem to be managed on a day-to-day basis as well as it can be. And I say that as someone who takes the Green Line every day from Boston to Brookline. You'll have headway variances of 12 minutes at peak, and it's sort of like, what are we doing here, guys? So I think that's certainly something that we could do. So let me take that, and Hannah and I will work on trying to get in some mode line specific letters together for different communities.
Yeah, that'd be great. I think to Jay's point too, if we're missing pieces like the Silver Line,
Yep.
That would certainly be important.
Cool. I guess that's all we had for you today then, since the T can't make it.
Do we want to approve the minutes? I think that was the one outstanding item, right?
I always forget about the minutes, Matt. Again, this is why you're the co-chair.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Do we hear a second? We have a second. I think we can do this by show of hands. All in favor, please raise your hand. All opposed, all abstaining. The ayes have it. The meeting minutes for February are approved. So thank you, everyone.
And I think logistically, on my calendar, it is showing that our next meeting would be May 20th. Lauren and Matt, you can correct me if I'm wrong or if anything pops up. But I have May 20th at 1:30 p.m. as of now.
And would it be, I mean, I'm happy to do this, or Hannah, Brian, if you guys want to do it, would it be possible just to maybe put a calendar hold? So folks have
Yeah,
it.
so there's on that date.
Yeah.
Yeah, there should be on that Outlook. Let me.
We'll confirm it, Matt, and if not,
Yeah.
Great. And we use Google Calendars, so there might be that annoying Google to Outlook dynamic, but yeah, just let me know.
No worries. And I'll make sure that the Zoom is created today. It looks like actually the Zoom may have just been us internally for now. So I'll make sure that Outlook goes out right after this meeting, assuming that that time and date works for everyone or for the majority. John saying they use Google as well.
Editorial note, it is the most annoying thing when we have to deal with
I know.
the dynamic
It's
between the
tough.
two.
Yeah. And it's tough because like we have a Google Drive as well. And then Outlook, yeah, it's a lot of juggling. And Zoom is its own world because Zoom will populate, as I'm sure you guys know, multiple invites. So I apologize if you get pinged a couple times.
Appreciate that.
Great. And if anyone has anything, as Brian said, because May 20th, I believe Brian, schedule wise, the CIP stuff will have completed by then. So definitely reach out to Brian, within like the next 2 to 3 weeks. The Capital Oversight Committee's meeting on the 30th for their next meeting. So if you do have any questions, comments, concerns, editorials that you want included into that report, definitely reach out to Brian and myself.
Thank you both. Can I get a motion, unless there's anything else, a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
And a second.
I'll second.
All right. Any opposition to adjourning?
Thanks, everybody.
Yeah, thanks everyone. Talk to you soon.